Welcome to my garden, GinGeeGoodEarth production, Roman numeral 6, part 9, a reading on the book A Universal History of the United States of America. In the beginning, I'll be reading the Wit and Wisdom of J.F.Kennedy, compiled by editors of Hallmark, and I'll be reading recipes from Stouffer's restaurant of Pittsuburgh and Chicago. In Stouffer restaurants, it is our primary desire to serve our guests the things they would like to have, to make our food and drinks of superlative goodness, to provide a continuing source of satisfaction to our guests and friends. Superlative goodness, and to provide a continuing source of satisfaction to our guests and friends. And I'm going to go over canopy cheese mixtures, dip and eat. I think I'll make one of these tonight for myself. It's a warm night in Pittsuburgh, humidity, but beautiful blue skies. I haven't seen chemtrails since the lockdown, March 11th, 2020, but I have seen a few flights since we've opened up our borders and our planes are no longer grounded. So I do see a few back. I'm watching. I like clean, fresh blue skies. But let me go ahead and begin the GinGeeGoodEarth program. And I'll be reading about John F. Kennedy, The Wit and Wisdom, Chapter 3, on the arts. And I want to dedicate this to his sister, who passed on Wednesday. Jean Kennedy Smith dies at 92, helped forge peace in Northern Ireland, and she is the last surviving sibling in a family that wrote itself into United States history. She was the first Kennedy woman of her generation to take on a serious political role. And there's articles on her history and how she was a United States ambassador to Ireland in the 1990s and helped pave the way for a formal agreement to end decades of sectarian violence in Northern Ireland. And she was 92 years of age. So I dedicate this to her. So without further ado, I will read on the arts. And previously, the past two videos I read on peace and on freedom. And this one is on the arts. So enjoy the picture show, and I will read The Wit and Wisdom of John F. Kennedy, Chapter 3, on the arts. As a great democratic society, we have a special responsibility to the arts. For art is the great democrat calling forth creative genius from every sector of society, disregarding race or religion or wealth or color. November 29th, 1962. As the world presses in and knowledge presses out, the role of the interpreter grows. Men can no longer know everything themselves. The 20th century has no universal man. All men today must learn to know through one another to judge across their own ignorance, to comprehend at second hand. These arts are not easily learned. Those who would practice them must develop intensity of perception, variety of mental activity, and the habit of open concern for truth in all its forms. April 20th, 1963. What freedom alone can bring is the liberation of the human mind and spirit, which finds its greatest flowering in the free society. November 29th, 1962. Behind the storm of daily conflict and crisis, the dramatic confrontations, the tumult of political struggle, the poet, the artist, the musician continue the quiet work of centuries, building bridges of experience between peoples, reminding man of the universality of his feelings and desires and despairs, and reminding him that the forces that unite are deeper than those that divide. November 29th, 1962. And so out of my book, Honey for All, I have a poem called Keep on Feeling, and I would like to read that today. I might have to get the older version. Okay. It's called Gold Honey, and it kind of reminds me of what he said, John F. Kennedy said, "What freedom alone can bring is the liberation of the human mind and spirit, which finds its greatest flowering in the free society." November 29th, 1962. Behind the storm of daily conflict and crisis, the dramatic confrontations, the tumult of political struggle, the poet, the artist, the musician continue the quiet work of centuries, building bridges of experience between peoples, reminding man of the universality of his feelings and desires and despairs, and reminding him that the forces that unite are deeper than those that divide. November 29th, 1962. I wrote Gold Honey around 2002, and it starts out like this. Gold honey, keep on feeling. What you got is gold honey. And you put your hand over your heart. Keep on feeling. It's a hard thing to do. If you're mad, be mad. Use it in your work and use it in your art. If you're feeling all right, then use that feeling in your work. You've got it right here. Touch where your heart is, located on your left side of your chest. In your heart, right here, gold honey. Everyone has it, but few know of this individual gold honey asset. Others do not know how to discover it. It's a primal instinct, and it has to be exercised, exerted, revealed. You have to live with a gold honey feeling. Go through life experiences of feelings, pain, joy, love, desire, good, happy, bad, struggle, conflict, passion. How many emotions do others have? Question yourself and others. They're numb, shallow surface cares. They may not be touched by life dramatics until hardship hits. So understand, you feel it. Shallow people suppress it. Don't suppress your gold honey feelings. Don't let others tell you how. Be a flower. Art and prosperity of feelings flower, and what flowers exert is gold honey. Gretchen Schmitt. Okay, now we're going to go to the book A Universal History of the United States of America, where we left off on chapter 4, and I will try to catch up. I'll try to catch up. So we talked about Delaware. This state was settled by a company of Swedes and Finns under the patronage of King Gustavus Adolphus. Charmed with its appearance that they gave it the same name, Paradise Point. The country they called New Sweden, and the river Delaware, New Swedenland Stream. They purchased of the Indians the lands on both sides of that river, from the sea to the falls, and seated themselves at the mouth of the Christian Creek near Wilmington. Being frequently molested by the Dutch, who claimed a right to the country, they for the protection built forts at Christian Lewistown and Tinicum. The last was their seat of government. John Prince, their governor, erected an elegant mansion at this place, which he named Prince Hall. Maryland. This state was settled by one Calvert, who sailed from America near the close of 1633, accompanied by about 200 immigrants, chiefly Roman Catholics. They arrived in February 1634 at the mouth of the river Potomac, at a conference with the Indians who dwelt on the shore. They purchased Yahmaco, a considerable village, the site which St. Mary now occupies. This colony, as well as all others in the early period of their existence, was afflicted with troubles. They were principally caused by one William Claiborne. While a member of the Virginia Council, he had obtained a license from the king to traffic in those parts of America where no other person enjoyed the exclusive right of trade. Under his license he had made a small settlement on the island of Kent, and when the grant was made to Lord Baltimore, refused to submit to his authority. He persuaded the natives that newcomers were Spaniards and the enemies to the Virginians. An Indian war was the consequence, which continued for several years. With great distress, Claiborne was indicted and convicted of murder, piracy, and sedition, and fleeing from justice. His estate was confiscated. He applied to the king for redress, but did not succeed. When the civil war between the king and the Parliament began, he embraced the cause of the latter, returned to Maryland, and by his intrigues fomented in 1645 a rebellion against its rulers, who were attached to the royal cause. Calvert, the governor, was compelled to fly to Virginia, and the insurgents seized the reins of government. The next year, however, the revolt was suppressed and tranquility restored. Page 76. In 1630, Charles I granted to Sir Robert Heath all the territory between the 30th and 36th degrees of north latitude and extended from the Atlantic Ocean to the South Sea by the name of Carolina. And I had a pony horse named Sir Robert. I'm a horse show judge, and I love horses. My grandmother, Martinique Montague, owned 2 polo farms in Kentucky. Under this grant, no settlement was made. In 1640, some source occupied that portion of North Carolina north of Albemarle Sound. In 1661, another settlement was made near the mouth of Clarendon River by adventurers from Massachusetts. The land being sterile and the Indians hostile, they soon abandoned it. In June, a patent was granted by the king, conveying to 21 trustees the territory now constituting the state of Georgia, which was to be apportioned graciously among the people, and donations were made for the purpose of conveying them thither, and for their support the first season. In November, 130 immigrants embarked for Georgia. In January, they arrived at Charleston. The Carolinas gave the adventurers a cordial welcome. They supplied them with provisions and boats to carry them to the place of their destination, and on the 9th of February they erected the first house where Savannah now sits. If you ever want to write to me, gibsongirls@mail.com, I lived in Beaufort, South Carolina, and resided on Fripp Island, the furthest point that jutted out into the Atlantic Ocean, and I worked at the local hospital and raised all my children. I know a grand history of Charleston and Beaufort and Savannah and Hilton Head, and I had delivered my firstborn boy on Hilton Head Island, and have a great love for the culture of the Gullah people, and I enjoyed living in South Carolina for many, many years, and it's a great place. I have visited many of the star forts, and Port Royal was also a place of fun. And again, Beaufort, South Carolina is the home of the Parris Island Marine Corps recruiting camp for men and women, and also the home of the Parris Island Air Station, where they fly the F-18s and F-16s and also the big cargo ships and so forth. A great history. And Harriet Tubman lived in Beaufort, and her house where she baked bread was only a couple doors down. And I'm also credited in the book Araminta, which was the name of Harriet Tubman that Helene Smith had written, and I'm credited in the book for helping her guide her through the Charleston, Beaufort area to compile the information on Harriet Tubman. Thank you so much, and let's move on. History of the whole colonies of America combined from 1661. Before the session of the General Assembly of Connecticut in October 1662, the charter was brought over. Upon the day of the election, it was publicly read to the freemen and declared to belong to them and to their successors. They then proceeded to make choice of Mrs. Wiley's and Mr. Talcott and Mr. Allen to receive the character into custody and keep it in behalf of their colony. In 1663, a tax of 300 pounds was levied upon the colony. A day of fasting and prayer was appointed. The colony, which much in debt many who dissatisfied with the governor and refused to pay anything for his support. No sooner did the officers begin to distrain the rates of those who refused to pay than it produced the most alarming consequences. The gentleman from Connecticut remonstrated against collecting taxes from those who had been taken under the protection of that colony, and desired New Haven to suspend the affair for further consideration. Enjoy the picture show. I have to take a sip of nice lemon iced tea. Colonel Nicholas arrived at Boston with the fleet and troops under his command July 23, 1664. He immediately communicated his commission to the colonies and requested the troops to assist him against the Dutch. He then sailed for New Netherlands, and on the 20th of August made a demand upon the town and forts upon the island of Manhados. General Winthrop, with several gentlemen from Connecticut, joined him according to his wishes. Stuyvesant, the Dutch governor, was an old soldier and had been prepared, doubtless would have made a brave defense He was extremely opposed to a surrender of the fort and town, but the opposition party outnumbered him, and he was obliged to submit on the 27th of August. After the reduction of the Dutch, Colonel Nichols fixed his residence at New York to manage the affairs of government. About 1664, a settlement commenced on the east side of Connecticut River. In 1667, Lyme was made a distinct town. In this and the next year, several new settlements were made and new towns incorporated. On the 20th of May, 1662, a purchase was made of the Indians, and East Haddam settled by 28 persons. In the session of May, 1670, it was enacted that Massaco should be called Simsbury. At the same term, New Haven Village was incorporated and made a town by the name of Wallingford. In 1643, war had been declared in England against the Dutch. The colony was put in a state of defense, and it was ordered that a troop of horse should be raised in each county. On the 30th of July, a small Dutch fleet arrived at New York. One John Manning, who commanded the fort and island, treacherously delivered them to the enemy without firing a gun or attempting the least resistance. Scarcely had the colonies recovered from their calamities before new and more terrible alarm and destruction presented themselves to all the colonies of New England. On the first day of July, 1674, the Duke of York commissioned Sir Edmund Andros to be governor of New York and all New England. Sir Edmund was a tyrant over the people, but the New England refused to submit to this man as their ruler. It was soon discovered that Sir Edmund Andros was about to make a hostile invasion on the colony and to demand its surrender. Detachments from the military were sent to New London and Saybrook. Captain Thomas Bull of Hartford commanded the party at Saybrook. About the 9th of July, 1675, the people of that town were surprised by the appearance of Major Andros with an armed force in the Sound making directly for the fort. The fort was soon manned, and militia called out for its defense. At the moment Captain Bull arrived, which gave them fresh courage. On the 11th, Major Andros hoisted the king flag on board and demanded a surrender of the fortress and town. Captain Bull raised his Majesty's colors and prepared for defense. The major did not like to fire on the king's colors and thought it would be a bloody affair to reduce the town by force. Early in the morning of the 12th, Sir Edmund desired to be admitted on shore. Captain Bull met the major at the landing and requested a treaty. The major rejected the proposal and commanded, in his Majesty's name, that the Duke Paton and his commission should be read. Captain Bull, in his Majesty's name, commanded him to forbear reading. When his clerk attempted to proceed, Captain Bull again repeated his command with such energy that it convinced the major it was not safe to proceed. The captain then acquainted him that he had an address from the assembly and read his protest. Governor Andros, pleased with his bold and soldier-like appearance, said, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Bull, sir." "Bull," said the governor, "it is a pity your horns are not tipped with silver." Finding he could make no impression upon the people, he soon sailed for New York. In the year 1675 began the famous Indian War, which was termed the King Philip's War. The leading one was Philip's